My name was Samir. I was an Imam, respected in my community, a beacon of tradition and faith. For years, I stood at the pulpit every Friday, guiding others through the teachings of the Quran, embodying the principles I was taught to uphold. But beneath my firm exterior, a storm was brewing, a growing emptiness that whispered doubts during prayers, where silence turned into a cacophony of questions I dared not voice. On that fateful day in Manchester, the air felt charged with the weight of unspoken fears. As I began my sermon, an intense wave of darkness overtook me. I collapsed, and for a moment, I felt detached from this world, surrendered to the abyss. And then, something extraordinary happened. A light, blinding and pure, enveloped me, and there stood Jesus, luminous and profound. He didn't challenge my beliefs. He illuminated the shadows lurking within them. He revealed a spiritual war beneath the surface of our existence, a confrontation between truth and the chains of tradition. In a heartbeat, my eyes opened to the divine reality I had overlooked for so long. I was shown that my life, my teachings, had become entangled in a web of fear and control, distancing me from the very essence of faith that I sought to impart. When I returned to consciousness, I was irrevocably changed. The battle within me raged on. Could I embrace this newfound truth amidst the looming threat of isolation from my family and community? Fear and guilt gnawed at my spirit as I wrestled with my convictions, believing in something that could break the very traditions I dedicated my life to preserving. But in that darkness, I found a flicker of hope. I began to seek the truth, connecting with others who had tread similar paths. In secret, I delved into the scriptures, unearthed the teachings of Jesus, and found a peace that transcended everything I knew. Here was my lifeline, a calling to share what I had experienced, to expose the light to those still lost in shadows. So join me in this journey as I reveal how one encounter ignited a revolution in my spirit and set me on a path toward freedom and purpose. Before we dive deeper, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what time is it right now in your corner of the world? Let's connect, for our stories are intertwined across the fabric of faith. And if you, like me, are seeking truth and love, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. Because this is not just my story, it's a divine awakening meant for us all. In the serene mosque in Manchester, the atmosphere weighed heavily with reverence and devotion. As the Friday Khateeb, I was tasked with delivering the sermon, a role that brought both honor and anxiety. The close-knit Muslim community where I served thrived on tradition and obedience, but beneath the surface I felt the pulse of unspoken questions. Each week, as I prepared to speak, I grappled with a truth that would not leave me: doubts about the doctrines we held dear, questions about whether our understanding was limited by what's acceptable to ask. The silent taboo surrounding skepticism loomed large, often leaving me wrestling with contradictions I could no longer ignore. On that fateful day, as I stood before my congregation, my heart raced with the weight of expectation. I offered the call to prayer, my voice echoing through the mosque, yet as I spoke, a stirring of confusion washed over me. I felt detached, as though my words were reverberating through me without truly connecting. What was once a sacred ritual now felt like a hollow performance. In the depth of my soul, I knew I was preparing to step into something unknown, a pivotal moment that was soon to redefine my faith. Suddenly, in the midst of the prayer, an overwhelming sense of dread took hold. The world around me began to fade, colors dimming, until only darkness engulfed my senses. It was a strange juxtaposition, such serenity replaced by an overwhelming void. Then, Just as suddenly as the darkness grasped me, I was thrust into another realm. There I encountered Jesus, surrounded by a light that felt alive and filled with grace. His presence was calming yet powerful, and as I approached, I knew that my life was about to change irrevocably. Jesus called my name, shattering the silence of the void and igniting a wave of revelations that surged through me. I was shown the hidden agendas that permeated society, how the elite manipulated the fabric of our beliefs to sow divide and chaos. In his presence, I witnessed the spiritual war playing out in our world, not a mere fight against ideologies, but a deep cosmic struggle for souls where deception often overshadowed the truth. I saw how convictions that ought to unify had been twisted to instill fear and hatred. In that instant, everything I thought I understood about faith and community was turned upside down. I suddenly awoke back in the mosque, heart racing, but the clarity of my encounter with Jesus remained etched in my mind. The determination to share what I had learned surged through me, yet the weight of fear lingered. Would my community welcome these truths, or would they cast me out as a heretic? Each moment spent grappling with these questions fueled a burning desire to speak out, to unravel the deceptions that had held so many captive. The risk of losing my place in this community shadowed my thoughts, yet the urgency of the truth demanded that I act. I felt compelled to begin a journey of awakening, not just for myself, but for all those drowning under the weight of societal expectations and hidden lies. The spiritual war was real, and it was time to confront the forces that sought to silence the truth. As I stepped into the mosque that Friday morning, a familiar weight settled on my shoulders. As a 35-year-old Imam, I felt the pressure to present a firm exterior to my community, a pillar of unwavering faith in the midst of an increasingly complex world. But as I took my place at the front, preparing to lead the prayer and deliver the sermon, I couldn't shake the deep emotional void I often felt inside. There I was, outwardly embodying my role with grace and authority, while inwardly, I grappled with spiritual disillusionment that threatened to unravel me. Each day felt like a tedious performance, and I frequently questioned whether I was truly serving God or merely playing a role in a system that demanded compliance over genuine belief. The feeling of disconnect nagged at me, especially as whispers of doubt crept into my mind. During moments of reflection, I would wonder if I was just reciting words without truly connecting with their meaning. The doctrines I upheld with such fervor felt increasingly distant, and I found myself questioning the essence of these teachings. Was my faith genuine, or had I been ensnared in a hidden agenda designed to uphold the power of the elite within our community? Those thoughts consumed my every waking moment, stirring an internal conflict that threatened my sense of identity and purpose. Then came the day that changed everything. As I prepared to address the congregation, I suddenly collapsed. Darkness enveloped me, and I was thrust into a void where time ceased to exist. In that disorienting space, I encountered Jesus. His presence was radiant, filled with warmth and compassion, and as he called my name, I felt an overwhelming sense of love wash over me. While the darkness receded, a series of revelations flooded my mind. I was shown the truth behind the spiritual war being waged not only in my heart, but also in the world around me. Jesus revealed to me the deception that kept people trapped, how the elite manipulate our beliefs to create division and fear. I saw the struggles faced by countless souls, each grappling with their own chains of misunderstanding, misguided by the very leaders meant to guide them. I witnessed the painful realities of a world at war, where conflicts ignited not just over territory but over ideologies that had been weaponized against us. It was a stark reminder of how easily we can be deceived when we accept narratives without questioning the source, when we allow ourselves to be divided instead of uniting under the truth. When I regained consciousness in the mosque, my heart was still racing, filled with a mixture of fear and determination. The revelations I had received during that experience had awakened something fierce within me. I realized that my journey was not just a personal awakening. It was a call to share the truth, to confront the spiritual war head-on. Yet, I felt a profound fear about how my community would respond to the changes within me. The fear of losing the respect I had garnered weighed heavily on my mind. Still, I knew that this mission was not merely about me. It was about inviting others to awaken as well. The urgency to communicate these truths became my driving force, and I steeled myself for the battle that lay ahead, ready to reclaim not just my faith, but also the hearts of those around me. During my prayers, a profound emptiness began to weigh heavily on my heart. As the Khateeb in Manchester, I dedicated myself to leading our community, yet the conviction I once felt began to waver. Each time I stood before my congregation, reciting the familiar verses, I felt as if I was reciting words without meaning, a performance devoid of the spiritual connection that should have filled me. I was trapped in the rigidity of traditions that felt suffocating, my soul crying out for something deeper, something more authentic. As these feelings of discontent grew, I found myself plagued by unsettling dreams. Each night I would drift into a realm illuminated by a brilliant light, and there I encountered beings of an ethereal nature. They whispered truths I had never considered, urging me to question the very foundations of the faith I had been taught. In the light of these dreams, Jesus began to appear, his presence soothing yet commanding. He seemed to beckon me into a space where my doubts could dissolve, inviting me to embark on a journey of spiritual awakening. In those moments of clarity, the revelations I received were stark and profound. I saw the hidden agendas lurking behind societal structures, how the elite manipulate our understanding of faith to keep us afraid and divided. The spiritual war one had only sensed before now unfolded before my eyes, revealing a deeper truth about the world we inhabit. The division within communities, the conflicts driven by misunderstanding, and the overwhelming deception that clouds our perceptions were all laid bare. I understood that what I experienced was not just a personal revelation. It was part of a larger movement beckoning for awakening. When I woke from these dreams, the weight of these insights lingered, filling my heart with both urgency and fear. How could I reconcile these newfound truths with the rigid doctrines I had always obeyed? As I prepared to lead my next sermon, the internal conflict bubbled inside me. I wanted to share the messages I had received from Jesus, but the potential backlash loomed large. Would my community accept this new understanding, or would they see me as a threat to the very fabric of our faith? The risk of alienation gnawed at my conscience like a relentless ache. Yet, despite the fear, there was a fire igniting within me. I felt compelled to speak out, to become a voice of truth among the shadows of deception. I yearned to reach others who faced their own spiritual wars, those who might feel the emptiness I had once experienced. As the words of my sermon began to take shape, I understood that this was not just a moment of personal awakening. It was an opportunity to illuminate the path for others, to guide them through the darkness and into the light of understanding. The journey forward was daunting. But I knew that embracing this calling would not only transform my life, but could also bring healing to those around me. As I stood before my congregation in the mosque, the familiar weight of expectation settled on my shoulders. It was a Friday sermon, a time for me to relay the teachings of our faith, yet an unsettling emptiness gnawed at my heart. I had always prided myself on being a devoted Khateeb, leading prayers and guiding my community in their spiritual practices. But with each recitation, I felt increasingly distant from the very essence of my beliefs, as if I were merely reciting words without any true understanding. The silence that filled the mosque during my speech felt suffocating, a stark contrast to the fervent devotion I wanted to inspire. Then, suddenly, everything changed. Without warning, the ground seemed to slip from beneath me, and I collapsed in front of them all. Darkness enveloped me, and I felt as though I was floating in an endless void. In that surreal trance, I was met by a blinding light, which pulsated with warmth and love. It was there that I encountered Jesus. His presence was striking, not just in brightness, but in the profound peace it radiated. He looked at me with compassion, and I felt a surge of understanding course through my veins, a deep knowing that this moment was destined to alter my life forever. In that sacred space, Jesus began to reveal the hidden truths that lie beneath the surface of our religious traditions. He shared insights about how these customs can sometimes obscure the true essence of spirituality. I saw how leaders and institutions, sometimes guided by their own hidden agendas, distort understanding for their gain, perpetuating a cycle of deception that keeps people bound in fear and misunderstanding. The spiritual war one had sensed in my waking life was laid bare before me, a conflict not merely over beliefs, but for the very souls of humanity. I felt the urgency of his message seep into my heart, beckoning me to awaken and acknowledge what had been concealed for far too long. These revelations struck me deeply. I witnessed how societal structures, with their intertwining politics and faith, often shield the truth rather than reveal it. I saw the manipulation employed by the elite to foster division, how easily we can be led to mistrust one another based on narratives spun to keep us from seeing our shared humanity. In the midst of this experience, I realized that my own role as a Khateeb had unintentionally contributed to this cycle of blindness. The conflict brewing within me mirrored the larger spiritual battle being waged outside, a battle for hearts and minds that demanded recognition and action. As the light began to fade and I felt myself being drawn back to consciousness, I understood my purpose in a new light. I would have to confront the fears that had kept me from pursuing the truth. The awareness of the spiritual warfare that surrounded us sparked an unquenchable desire within me to share this message with my community. While I feared the potential backlash, a rejection from those I loved dearly, I also felt an overwhelming responsibility to speak out against the deception that had dominated my life. With each heartbeat, the essence of awakening grew stronger within me, and I steeled myself for the challenges to come, determined to advocate for truth amidst the shadows that threatened to consume it. Awakening from my trance, the world around me felt both familiar and foreign. I was back in the mosque, surrounded by the faces of my community, yet everything had changed. The experience I had with Jesus lingered in my mind, a powerful revelation that stirred a tumultuous moral dilemma within me. I felt the weight of their silent judgments pressing down, the unspoken accusations branding me as a heretic for daring to question the beliefs I had once embraced wholeheartedly. Here I was, Samir, an Imam meant to guide others, now wrestling with guilt over my newfound convictions that threatened to alienate me from those I loved. The echoes of my call to prayer still reverberated in my ears, yet the clarity I had gained struck a dissonant chord. Each face in the crowd represented a fragment of my past, connections that now felt strained under the unfolding tension. I longed to share the truth I had found, to reveal the hidden agendas of the elite that manipulate our understanding of faith for their benefit. I could see how this manipulation had led to division and animosity, creating a chasm between communities and families. The revelation that Jesus had shared with me haunted my thoughts. How could I remain silent when the call to awaken others was so compelling? But as I prepared to confront this new mission, fear washed over me. Would my family reject me? Would my community see me as a traitor? These questions loomed large, gnawing at my confidence. I remained tethered to the traditions I upheld for so long, yet I felt an equally strong pull toward the awakening I had experienced. It was as though two worlds were colliding within me, one steeped in the comfort of tradition, and the other blazing with the urgency of revelation. Each time I thought of speaking out, the fear of their rejection sent chills down my spine, but the truth demanded expression. In those quiet moments of despair, I turned to prayer, seeking guidance from Jesus. The warmth of his presence enveloped me, reminding me that fear can be a deceptive barrier, one that keeps us from pursuing the call meant for our lives. I felt compelled to step into the light of truth and take a risk that could alter everything. What if my awakening could serve as a catalyst for others to question their own beliefs, challenging the narratives that had kept them chained to ignorance? The vision of a community unified in understanding and love began to form, one that transcended the divisions created by fear and misunderstanding. With each passing day, I resolved to share my testimony, even as the road ahead promised to be fraught with challenges. I knew I wouldn't be alone. There were others like me, individuals yearning for spiritual freedom and understanding. My experiences could pave the way for collective awakening. This was about more than my journey. It was a shared mission to unravel the deception that bound so many of us. I felt the urgency within me rise, a longing to ignite the truth and create dialogue about the hidden spiritual battles we faced. As I took my first steps forward, I prepared myself for whatever repercussions awaited, knowing that the truth of Jesus would guide me through the shadows into a brighter future. In secret, I began to seek out others who had experienced similar revelations. It was a quiet but fervent journey, one that felt both liberating and terrifying. I would meet with individuals who shared their stories of awakening, each tale echoing my own, struggles against the spiritual war that rages around us. We spoke of the manipulations of the elite, how hidden agendas disguised themselves beneath layers of tradition and convention. In those conversations, I found a sense of community, a reassurance that I was not alone in my quest for truth. Each meeting ignited a flicker of hope within me, urging me to delve deeper into the teachings of Jesus. As I immersed myself in the Bible, the words jumped off the page, resonating with my heart and soul. Passages came alive in a way I had never experienced before, revealing the essence of faith that transcended mere rituals. I began to pray directly to Jesus, feeling an intimacy that warmed my spirit. It was in those prayers that I cultivated an inner peace, a renewal that contrasted sharply to the turmoil that had once consumed my thoughts. I approached my prayers not with a sense of obligation, but with gratitude, a recognition that I was entering a sacred space seeking understanding. Yet, the fear of exposure loomed over me like a dark cloud. What if my family, my community, learned of my beliefs? The thoughts filled me with dread. I had seen how easily people turned against those who dared to challenge the status quo. But with each revelation, this fear started to feel less suffocating. The more I understood, the more it became clear that awareness was essential to break free from the chains of deception. It was a tightrope walk between maintaining my ties to my past and embracing the truth that set me free. The revelations I had received during my near-death experience with Jesus continued to guide me. I could see how pervasive themes of division emerged from societal narratives, how technological manipulation played a role in fostering misunderstanding. In my quiet moments, I pondered how essential it was for individuals to recognize these forces at play. The way leaders manipulate beliefs to create chaos and give rise to wars echoed in my mind, a stark reminder of the urgency of my mission. I knew that if I were to speak out, it would require not just courage, but also a willingness to face the inevitable backlash from those who felt threatened by these truths. With each passing day, I felt a greater sense of resolve. I could no longer remain silent about what I had learned. I wanted others to experience the same awakening that had transformed my life from one of doubt to one of clarity and purpose. As I prepared to share my journey, I hoped it would resonate with others, encouraging them to challenge their own beliefs and recognize the truth hidden beneath layers of societal deception. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to confront whatever consequences awaited me, knowing that my awakening was just the beginning of a greater journey toward truth and unity. As I stood in front of the congregation preparing to deliver the Friday sermon, the weight of my revelations pressed down heavily on my heart. My experience with Jesus during the brief moment I lost consciousness lingered vividly in my mind. It was clear to me that this was not just a personal awakening, but part of a divine mission. I had been touched by something extraordinary, and it shook the very foundations of my faith. The truth I had discovered was too important to keep to myself. Yet, as I looked out at the faces of my community, a mix of fear and determination swirled within me. The risks of sharing such profound truths haunted my thoughts. The memories of that encounter flooded back. In the depths of darkness, I had encountered the light of Jesus, who revealed to me the hidden agendas that manipulate our lives. He showed me how the elite control the narratives we accept, perpetuating deception that keeps us divided. I witnessed a world torn apart by conflicts fueled by misunderstandings and a lack of awareness. As he spoke to me, I understood the urgency of the spiritual war we were all caught in, and I knew I could not sit back and allow these truths to remain unspoken. But the question loomed: how could I convey this message to those who might perceive it as a threat? The reality of my situation was sobering. Breaking the silence could lead to accusations of heresy, possibly tearing apart the relationships I had fostered throughout my life. I could feel the eyes of my family, my friends, and my community bearing down on me. Would they understand the depth of my spiritual awakening, or would they cast me aside in disbelief? My heart raced at the thought of rejection, yet the burning desire to share what I had learned was undeniable. In my quiet moments of prayer, I sought guidance from Jesus, asking for strength and courage to move forward. I needed the clarity that comes only from a deep connection with Him. The assurance of His presence filled me with understanding, reminding me that the truth must be spoken, even in the face of potential backlash. I knew that sharing my testimony could spark a ripple effect, awakening others who also yearned for deeper meaning in their lives. If I could help even one person break free from the chains of deception, I would consider it worth the risk. With a heart full of hope, I began to formulate a plan. I sought out individuals within my community who I sensed were also questioning their beliefs. Together, We would create a safe space to explore these spiritual truths. We would listen, discuss, and support one another in our quests for understanding. I felt it was essential to unite those who were struggling with doubt, and together confront the hidden agendas that had tried to keep us apart. As the day of the sermon approached, I felt both fear and exhilaration. Was I ready to step out in faith and speak my truth? The journey ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but if Jesus had shown me the way, I had to trust in the mission entrusted to me. In a moment of courage, I stood before the mirror, staring at the man reflecting back at me. Samir, a name associated with tradition and duty, now felt like a chain binding me to the expectations of my family and community. My experience with Jesus had opened my eyes to a new reality, revealing the hidden agendas that kept so many of us ensnared in a spiritual war. I could no longer conform to what was expected of me. The truth I had discovered demanded action, a step into the unknown that could change everything. The time had come to embrace my awakening fully. As I prepared to leave my home, I felt a surge of determination. The weight of my decision pressed down on me, mingled with fear. I was aware of the consequences that awaited me, the potential backlash, the rejection from those I had loved, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Yet the call to share my testimony felt more powerful than the fear of ostracization. In my heart, I knew I had to proclaim my beliefs and stand firm in the truth I had embraced. With every breath, I felt a sense of liberation rise within me, urging me forward. In a powerful symbolic gesture, I took my traditional garments, clothes that represented my past, my identity, and the pressures I had endured, and I placed them into the fire. As the flames leaped higher, I watched the fabric dissolve, releasing the weight of my old life. Each ember that floated upward felt like a part of me breaking free from the constraints that had held me captive. In that act of destruction, I felt reborn. It was as if I had shed my previous self, embracing the unknown path ahead, driven by the revelations I had come to understand. As I left my home, the streets of Manchester felt both familiar and foreign. I could see the faces of my neighbors, some filled with concern, others with outright disdain. The fear of rejection hung in the air, a palpable tension that surrounded me as I stepped into my new identity. I knew the spiritual war was not merely about my journey. It was about something much larger. I felt compelled to speak out against the manipulation of beliefs by the elite, who thrive on our ignorance and division. I carried this weight with me, a sense of purpose rooted in the understanding that the revelation I had received was part of a larger mission. My first sermon in this new light was a mix of anxiety and determination. I prepared to share the truth that had changed my life, hoping to inspire others who might also be searching for meaning. As I recounted my experiences and the love of Jesus, I could see faces shift from skepticism to curiosity. The fires of awakening I had ignited influenced those around me, and I felt the urgency of our mission crystallize. We were all engaged in a struggle against deception, seeking the truth that could unite us beyond our differences. My journey had only just begun, but the flame of awakening was spreading, and I knew it was time to confront the challenges ahead with unwavering faith. Years later, my journey led me to a new community where I found purpose in aiding others who struggled beneath the weight of their religious traditions. After that life-altering revelation with Jesus, I felt compelled to share my testimony, a story born of profound transformation and spiritual awakening. The stories I heard in this supportive environment paralleled my own, each individual battling their own internal conflicts, often feeling trapped by the very doctrines that once provided solace. Together we explored what it means to confront the spiritual war that rages within us and around us. In this new space, I felt empowered to facilitate discussions that sought the truth behind our beliefs. We delved deep into the reasons why many had begun to question the very foundations of their faith. I shared my experiences of awakening, the revelation that revealed the hidden agenda of the elite who manipulate narratives to maintain control over communities. I outlined how deception can seep into our understanding of spirituality, creating division where unity should exist. As I spoke, I could see the flicker of recognition in their eyes, a shared understanding that we were not alone in this journey. Every encounter was filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. I faced the reality that some in my new community were still tethered to fear, unable to fully embrace the truth I had found. The shadows of my former life still lingered in my thoughts, especially the hope for reconciliation with my family and former community. They were people I deeply loved, but my path had diverged so dramatically from theirs. How could I explain the depths of my transformation to them? Would they ever understand the liberation I felt through my faith in Jesus? As I engaged with more people seeking guidance, I felt a growing urgency to address the spiritual war actively being fought within society. I began organizing gatherings, workshops where individuals could confront the narratives that had kept them in bondage. With each gathering, we became increasingly courageous in our discussions, recognizing the manipulation behind the scenes. I encouraged those around me to question what they had always accepted as truth, to seek out the deeper meaning behind the traditions that may have initially brought them joy. Together, we would navigate the complexities of faith, challenging the deception surrounding us. Empowered by the clarity I gained from my experiences, I found renewed strength in my mission. I believed that by sharing my testimony, I was not merely recounting my story, but igniting a spark for awakening in others. Each discussion carried the potential for transformation, and I was determined to shine a light on the truth. The spiritual war we were engaged in needed voices brave enough to speak out, and I felt it was my responsibility to foster that courage within myself and my community. The road ahead promised challenges, but I was ready to face whatever came my way, believing firmly that the truth would ultimately unite us in the fight for our spiritual liberation. As I stood in front of my community in the mosque, I felt the weight of expectation all around me. As the Friday Khateeb, my role was not just to lead. It was to embody the principles of our faith with conviction and clarity. Yet, beneath the surface, a growing unease gnawed at me. There I was, reciting familiar prayers, but inside, I felt trapped in a cage woven from the very traditions that should bring comfort. Deep down, I knew my faith had become more of an obligation than a source of genuine connection with God. It was disheartening to realize that I was growing increasingly disconnected from the very essence of spirituality. That disconnection prompted a series of unsettling dreams that felt more vivid and real than anything I had experienced before. In these dreams, I encountered a blinding light, and there stood Jesus, his presence radiant, filled with compassion and understanding. Each time he called my name, it felt as though he was reaching into my soul, igniting a spark of truth that had been buried beneath doubt and fear. During these moments, I was shown glimpses of a hidden war, a spiritual war that raged within my own heart and across the world. The deceptions that permeated our society were laid bare before me, revealing how the elite manipulate our beliefs, crafting narratives designed to keep us divided and powerless. As I awakened from one of those dreams, the revelation burned brightly in my mind. The realization that religion can serve as a cage instead of the pathway to freedom struck me deeply. I began to question everything I had held dear. Was I perpetuating a system that prevented real awakening? I saw how the doctrines I had been taught often obscured the essence of what Jesus embodied: love, truth, and liberation. Each layer of my understanding seemed to peel back, exposing the urgency of sharing this newfound truth with others who remained unaware of the deceptive forces at play. With each passing day, the weight of my revelations pressed me to act. I knew that my calling extended beyond my own awakening. There was a responsibility to guide others toward the light that Jesus had shared with me. I sought out individuals within my community who were also struggling, those navigating the complexities of faith and confusion. In our conversations, I was met with a range of emotions: curiosity, fear, and even hostility. The fear of retribution for questioning tradition loomed heavily, creating a palpable tension. Yet, I couldn't shake the conviction that speaking the truth was vital to breaking down the barriers that kept us in chains. I began to organize small gatherings where we could openly discuss our struggles and the spiritual war we were all a part of. The revelation that Jesus had shared with me was not just my burden to carry, but a message meant to be shared. As we explored these topics, the atmosphere became charged with possibility and hope. Each meeting brought forth stories of transformation, how individuals began to awaken from the slumber of ignorance and fear. I believed that together, through our collective courage and unwavering faith, we could unveil the hidden agendas, challenge the authority of the elite, and step into the liberating truth of our shared humanity. The journey was only beginning, but I knew that embracing this path was essential for both my healing and the awakening of those around me. Now that you've journeyed with me through this profound transformation, I invite you to reflect on something deeper. Have you ever felt the pull of a truth that shattered your perceptions, urging you to dig beneath the surface of what you've been told? It's a question many of us ponder in silence, but let's not allow it to fade into the shadows. What I encountered during my darkest moment was not just a personal revelation. It was a call to action, a beckoning away from complacency and into the light of a greater understanding. We are all participants in a spiritual war, surrounded by narratives woven by those who wish to keep us divided. It's time to awaken to the fact that our stories intersect, and the truth seeks to unite us rather than divide us. So I turn to you now. What hidden truths have you unearthed in your own life? How do they challenge your beliefs or encourage you to reevaluate your path? I urge you to share your experiences in the comments below. Your voice matters in this vital conversation, and I promise that I read every word. If my story resonates with your spirit and ignites a spark within you, please subscribe to Truth from Beyond and hit the notification bell, because what's coming next will offer even greater perspectives on our shared spiritual journey. The whispers of truth are calling, and the time to heed them is now. Thank you for being part of this dialogue, for daring to step into the light even when it feels daunting. I'm Hamza, and together let's continue to seek, question, and uncover the truths that will set us free. Until next time, remember, the journey of awakening is one we embark on together.